The NBA playoffs are finally here, which means there's plenty at stake. Giannis Antetokounmpo was the target of a lot of criticism before he led the Bucks to a title. Years before that, Kawhi Leonard was thought of as a pretty good NBA player until he led the Raptors to a title. Matt, I got a very simple question for you. Maybe not on the same scale as Leonard and Giannis, but who do you think stands to change their narrative the most this postseason with a deep run and maybe a title?
Well, I think right off the bat, you have to talk about a guy that maybe doesn't even have a narrative because this is only his second trip to the playoffs. But I think Ja Morant and the Grizzlies in general, but really Ja Morant building off of the momentum he's had this entire season, is a guy that I'm excited to see what kind of narrative comes out because he can either start out as a positive one or a negative one. Similar to the Giannis situation, everybody knew the greatness of the regular season for Giannis, and nobody can doubt what Ja Morant has been able to do during this regular season. How he plays in this, postseason as a number 2 seed, as the guy on this super hot Memphis Grizzlies team, especially when there's been a little bit of a pushback on how important Ja is to that team with how the Grizzlies have performed without him.
Very true.
This is going to be interesting to see how the narrative starts to form around him. And honestly, the other thing is people seem to be ready to crown him like the face of the league. Mm-hmm. If he can go out and beat Minnesota, and then let's see what happens in the second round, maybe even make it to a Western Conference Finals, they're going to be excited about him. Vice versa, if he starts to struggle, people are going to always hold that against him until he has success in the postseason.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. And I think it's important to point out, again, how good the Grizzlies have played this season without Ja Morant. That is a part of the narrative with him right now. And I agree. If he's able to lead the Grizzlies on obviously a first-round playoff win, maybe win another round or two after that, I mean, I think people are going to start talking about Ja as, the face of the league if he isn't already, if people aren't already having that conversation. But we're in the Western Conference, so I'll match a Western Conference guy who can really change the narrative around him. And for me, it's Nikola Jokic. He's going to win MVP again this year for the second consecutive season. And I know a lot of people, including myself, who have an issue with that. It's not because we don't think that he's deserving, because he is, but it's just the fact that there are at least 2 other candidates who have better or similar stats who aren't a 6 seed. But with that being said, Jokic could put all those naysayers like myself to bed with a run, starting with the first round and the Golden State Warriors, who aren't exactly the favorite in the West by any means, especially with Steph Curry a little hobbled. So if Nikola Jokic can beat Steph, Clay, Draymond, and the Warriors, maybe win a round after that, I don't think anybody can have a problem with talking about Nikola Jokic as a top 5 player in the NBA. Again, he has the MVP. He's probably going to get another one. He's certainly one of the very best players in the league. But, getting another run under his belt without MPJ, without Jamal Murray, I think would do a lot for Nikola Jokic's, kind of narrative as one of the best players, obviously one of the best bigs in the league.
Absolutely. And that's a matchup that I think he can dominate in because they don't have anyone that can guard him.
Exactly.
And they're guard heavy.
Good point.
You're going to have Draymond on him.
Good point.
It's going to be interesting. Definitely exciting because I think people are ready for him to fail because they want to, more for the fact that they are a Joel fan or a Giannis fan or one of the other MVP fans.
Makes sense. So we talked about a couple of Western Conference guys who can change the narrative. How about somebody in the East playoffs who you think could really change the talking points about them?
I mean, there's a few guys on one team, so I'm just going to go with the team. The Philadelphia 76ers. Obviously, Joel Embiid in particular. This is a guy that, you could argue should be back-to-back MVP winner. Jokic obviously got it last year. He probably will get it again this year. But he's been hunting for that. They've trusted the process, and he's been hunting for just the Eastern Conference Finals appearance and getting out of that second round. Hasn't been able to do it. Injuries and some lack of performance from other guys on the team last year cost them against Atlanta. So there's him. Then there's James Harden, who has now forced himself out of 2 different, franchises, one of which was Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets, ending what we all thought was going to be an amazing big 3. And his playoff performances have been very poor. So that's another guy. And then Doc Rivers, the coach. Doc Rivers at this point has blown more 3-1 leads, I think, than any other coach in NBA history. I don't have that stat completely correct, probably, but it seems like a lot recently. And so this is a Philly team that has, even Daryl Morey too, for what he's, sent over to bring in this group to go get James Harden, his guy. This is a team with title aspirations. Anything short of an Eastern Conference Finals appearance is going to be a letdown. And so Philly is going to have a magnifying glass on them because all these different guys are trying to prove somebody or some sort of narrative wrong. And if they don't, that's all anybody's going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I don't think any team is under more pressure this postseason than the Philadelphia 76ers, maybe the Brooklyn Nets, but, they have a little bit more excuses than the Sixers do at this point. And so it makes sense that you're pointing the finger at Embiid, Harden, Doc, and even Daryl Morey, because this is a big couple weeks upcoming for him as well. But I'm going to talk about a guy that Doc, Embiid are going to be game planning for in the first round. Toronto Raptors and Pascal Siakam. Obviously, Siakam, he should be on an All-NBA team this year, whether it be second team or third team. He's been absolutely spectacular. We haven't really been paying attention to the Raptors. First Raptor in franchise history to average 25-5 in this season. Obviously, his averages were a little bit better than that, but man closed his season out with 21 consecutive games of double-digit scoring versus the 76ers this season, who he's going to play in the first round. He averaged 30 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists on 50% shooting. The Raptors were 2-1 versus the Sixers this year. Pascal just gave them a 37-point triple-double last week in a win over the Sixers. So I think this is a series that is going to go 6-7 games. And obviously, Pascal Siakam, he has a ring. He has had playoff moments. He has been known in the past as, somewhat of a Giannis stopper. But if he can, lead this Toronto Raptors team as the guy, because he is the guy in Toronto over the Philadelphia 76ers, who certainly have title aspirations this season over Joel Embiid, James Harden, like you mentioned earlier, 2 Hall of Fame players and a Hall of Fame coach. If Pascal Siakam is the reason that those guys don't advance to the second round, I think we got to start talking about Pascal Siakam as a top 10-ish player in the NBA. The numbers support it. And obviously the winning has to come with that too. But if it does, that's a conversation that's going to have to be had. So Pascal Siakam has a lot to gain with some good play here in the next couple weeks.
Well, I mean, we talked about it in our, Who Are They series. I said that this Toronto team felt like they were one superstar away. Mm-hmm. Spicy P could become that superstar, and I'll have to take back my words because he has been balling out, and this is probably one of my favorite playoff series in the first round is this Toronto versus Philly. So it's going to be great.
Agreed. And since you mentioned the Who Are They series, one of the things I said about the Raptors at that point is they have a foursome that I like with just about anybody in the league, led by Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Gary Trent, and Fred VanVleet. That foursome, which is going to be on the court the 99% of the time for the Toronto Raptors during this series and throughout the playoffs, that is something to be feared. And the 76ers better be on their game. The loss of Matisse Thybulle for road games is going to hurt. That presence is going to be felt. So I agree. This is a series I'm going to be glued to the TV for, but we can't wait to watch these playoffs finally tip off. But that's going to do it for this episode of Simple Question. Catch us on the next one. But for Scott Proctor and Matt Morris right here, we'll catch you next time.